welcome to Tim's Workshop out here in the mini shed. Going to continue on with part 10 of the 1965 1200 40 horse VW motor. We went through and measured the main bearing bars. We need to torque down the case because that's the way it should be. When they originally bored this thing, they had the case torqued. And I've seen videos too, but you know, I was practicing on measuring the bores and how to do it and all that, but I noticed my measurements were kind of goofy. So I remembered that you really need to torque these things down, these cases, before you take those measurements. So I did that, and so now I got the measurements written on the board, and we'll go over that. You guys see how I'm measuring these. I'm using a micrometer and a telescoping gauge, which isn't like using a professional bore gauge tool, but it gives me confidence on where we're at as far as these bore sizes and how to proceed on. Hey, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe, leave comments, hit the notification bell. If you like, give me a like, hit the old hand thing, and let your friends and family, and your doggies too, know about Tim's Workshop on my YouTube, alright? So let's get going on part 10 of this VW motor. Okay, so these are the old measurements. I changed the position of these bearings. Changed it. They're both matched now. The flywheel end, right, is actually number 1, then number 2, number 3, and number 4 is the aft end of the motor where the pulley goes, okay? We already went through these numbers. I changed this one because I had it wrong. This is actually over by 1/1000ths, which is no big deal, but there again, like I said, the case wasn't torqued. So what I did to torque it, these 6 bolts here, the main bolts, I torqued them down. It's 27 foot-pounds, but make sure you look it up so you know for sure. And then on the front end where the forward bearing is, there's 3 bolts up there, smaller diameter, that I torqued to 18 foot-pounds. So it was snugged up good, and the bores should be round. This is what we got. And so we'll compare the two. On the number 1 bearing, here on the flywheel end, we have 25594 and 25593. It should be 2559, right? So we got that. These are the last digit. Doesn't really make a whole lot of difference on these little numbers here, unless you're off on these. Then it does make a difference. So what we had was 25587, 25580. So after torquing this down, the number actually got higher. That means the bearing was in a little bit and not spread out around. That explains why. And then also, when I took the measurements, I was taking it at 7 and 1 o'clock position and 5 and 11. I changed it over here. I went from, so it's more of a crisscross pattern without hitting the oil hole and the dowel pin hole. I went from 8 and 2 o'clock to 4 and 10 o'clock. Now our numbers are actually looking really good since I torqued the case down. So number 2, okay, we got 25595 and 25581. So this is actually under, not over. So we're still good here, okay? It just means it's off as far as roundness, just slightly by 1/1000. Number 3, we got 25582 and 25593. 25593 is good, and then 2558 is, we're pretty close to 1,000th difference there. And there again, this is on the small side. That's on the small side. That's on the small. So we got room there. So we're fine. The only thing it's telling us is this is out around just slightly. And that could be just a, you know, these things are not really cleaned up all that good either, you know. So we've gone through 1 through 3, right? Those are the larger main bearings. And now we're up to number 4, which is a small bearing on the crank. These numbers, 1.9666 and 1.9677, right? There again, we're about a thousandths difference there. We got over here, this is what it should be, right? 1.970 that I got from somebody. It's not even in the book, you know. Oh, wow, I don't have the book yet, so that's an issue. I need to get the book, especially before I start building this thing. The original numbers I got was 9653 and 9647. Well, the numbers are higher now, which is good because we're closer to this number here now. Putting the bolts in by this bearing, right, the smaller bolts, and torquing them up to 17, somehow or another, my hole size got bigger. And there again, like I said, it's round now, right? So that explains why it's bigger. You want a clearance of about 2 to 3 thousandths clearance between your bushings and the bores, because oil's got to flow through there, right? So that's what I wanted to go over with, is these numbers. So what we're going to do now, we know that our numbers are better. We're going to get this back off, put it in the stand for now. We're going to take it back apart and clean it better, of course. We're going to get the crankshaft up here and start taking that crankshaft apart, get the bearings out of it, start taking measurements on the crank. In the aft end of that crankshaft, I got to get that tool to remove the crank gears off. That tool, I can get one at a fairly good price. Now it's time to start taking some stuff apart here. Let's see. There we go. Okay, got that out. Got the splash guard off. Got the little crummy bearing off. Okay, now we're going to take these guys off. As far as I know, these are all the same length, so it doesn't matter which way they go, other than the fact that this is a match set. The lower cap and the rod, you got to keep them together, and the bolts, you know. Oh yeah, that works better. There we go. Okay, there's one. Okay. Okay, got that one. Okay, that's got a number on it. That's got a number. Alright. Has 108, and this is 108. Match set. The reason they do that is they cut this, and when they cut it, once it's cut, these pieces have to stay together for them to work together. If you get them mixed up, they're not a match set anymore, which will cause you problems. Crankshaft is now taken apart, except for the gears. Okay, so there is an issue here. So these pins that are on this end of this crank are larger than these pinholes These pinholes look like a 3/16 diameter, and these look like almost a quarter. This flywheel is not going to work, even though it is a 6-volt flywheel, but it's not going to work on this. I'll contact the guy up there that I got this motor from, because he did have some other flywheels, I think, so I'll just have to ask him if he has one that matches this crank. We're going to go ahead and measure these journals. So this is the first one here, so we're going to measure it, and then the center one, and then the end one we can't measure because we gotta get that tool. Let's look up what this is supposed to be. Okay, I pulled up the Type 1 main bearing off of J-Bugs. It has the information here. Crank measurement should be 2.164. Okay, crank should be 2.164. Okay, so number one, see what we got here. Two, 1, 25, 50, 55, 60, 65, 70, 1, 2, 73. And the last digit is 1. Should be 164. And we are higher than that by 8 thousandths higher. Let's measure this again, just to make sure. Okay, so we have 2.1, 25, 50, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64. And the last number is 3. Okay, so let's measure this other one again. 12 and 6 o'clock. Okay, so what's this other one up here? 9 and 3. So let's measure the 9 and 3 position again. And so when you measure this, you use this clicker here, right? So it's gentle, right? You don't want something that's too hard on it. And when you do this, you kind of go back and forth and find the tightest spot in the middle. We have 2.1, 25, 50, 61, 62, 63, 64. All right. So we got a better measurement this time. $64.8. We're going for number 2. 9 and 3. I might have to stand up for this one to make sure I'm in there in the middle. 2.1, 25, 50, 60, 1, 2, 3, 64. And the small number is 6. Let's do the 12 and 6 number. 2.1, 61, 2, 3, 4, 64. Small number is 1. I'm going to measure that one again. It almost looked like I was on 165 there. So let's check it again. Yeah, there we go. So definitely 6'4", and what number? Small number 8. Okay, so we're okay on the numbers. but we need to polish this up because it feels rough. I can drag my fingernail across here and I can feel it. We're going to polish this up and then recheck the numbers again and see if we're okay. Right now we're okay, but this really needs to be smoothed up. So we're going to smooth it up, but I'm going to wait until I get this other end off to do that. We want to check the rod journals. So let's see. Let's put the thrust measurements down here so we can continue on with the rod journals. All right, so thrust 868, 864 point, and was 868. So number one, first we'll put rod journals, and should be, rod journals are 55 millimeters. 55 millimeter is 2.165. So we're still going to the same thing. We're going to start with 9 and 3 first. Okay. 2.1643. Wow. So since I'm getting better at it, let's go back up the top one up there and do it again. There we go. Yeah, I'm getting better at it. Yeah, these things are touchy. You gotta be really good and be square. Make sure everything's clean, you know. So 61, 62, 63, 64. 64.2. Measure it again. 64.1. So what do we got here? We're consistently at 164, which is basically what the crank is. So they're all about the same, although in the book, well, on my phone, right? So 1200, 1300, 1500, 1600, 40 horse, 55 millimeter or 2.165. Rods will have the inside diameter of the 57.75. All right, so I took the con rods in the house and measured all of them and wrote the measurements down on the board here. The number 2 con rod, I didn't take the bushings out, and I'm going, why is this so small, you know? And then it dawned on me, oh, because you can't really tell. These con rods, the bushings are dark. Until you take those bushings out, you don't really see the inside very well. And I got all the measurements down here, okay? And the measurement is supposed to be 2.75.5 to 0.760, right? So we'll look at this one. Okay, this is a good measurement, except it's a little under. It's supposed to be 275.5, right? That's a little undersized, but this one here is pretty wide. It's like 3 thousandths wider. And then number 2, same thing. And these measurements here are at the 2 and 8 position. These measurements here, where it's pretty close to being right on, is the 12 and 6. Something going on with the side measurements. Let me show you here. So this would be the 12 and 6, 2.275, 0, and 2.757 on both those con rods, which is good. But when you go down to 8 o'clock to 2 o'clock position, it gets wider. Now, is that a big deal? I don't know. My opinion is get the new bushings, right? Put this together on the crank and try it out. And if these things spin like they're supposed to spin, we're good. Okay, I got this figured out now. It was confusing. J Bugs wrote down what the con rod is without the bushing in millimeters, and then next to it they put down a measurement that didn't make any sense because the measurement was supposed to be with the bushings in. So I got to figure it out. So I put the bushings back in, and I measured it on number 1 over here. Let's turn the camera around. Okay, we're looking at these measurements here. Forget about the bottom one. 2.2750, all right? With the bushing in at that location, this is what we got. 2.1, 100 thousandths difference, okay? 79, almost 71, all right? So there's basically 4 thousandths difference between these, okay? And then we measured at the 8 and 2 position, so to see if it's even close to this one here. 2.1728, 100 thousandths difference. So when you put in these bushings, I measured them just roughly, you know, and it was 60 thousandths, you know, but I'm measuring it on a curved surface, and my micrometer is flat ends, so got to take into account for that. So I just rounded it off at 100. It's probably more than that. And I was just in the house trying to look it up to see what the thickness of these are supposed to be. I don't know if it's written on there or not. Let's see. No, it's just the part number. Got an elephant VW deal, and it has a number 113 105 701. These are old bushings, so they're worn down. So a thicker bushing would, I believe, make these numbers closer. So you look at this number over here. This is the journal, right? So you got 164, and with the bushing in there as it was. So let's do some math here. Let's do the top one. So 170 minus 164 equals 6 thousandths. Tolerance, and these are old bushings. Now how much was worn down? Probably 1,000. So you're probably looking at 4 to 5 thousandths. And that's about right, because when you take these rods, you can move them back and forth a little bit. When they're sticking up like that, you can move them back and forth. So that makes sense. And that's to have enough oil keeping these journals lubed up and these bushings lubed up so they don't wear out right away. Hi, I hate math. Not my thing. I don't like math. I don't like numbers. But in this, yeah, you have to do it to know where you're at. I got the puller, and I also got some lock ring pliers, the right ones to get the lock ring clip off. So let's see what this puller looks like. Got this from California. There we go. All right. Some assembly required. It's got oil on it, so that's cool. But every time you go to use this, it's recommended that you put oil on it. Snug that down. Snug that one down. All right. Okay. Now, let's get this thing off. Okay, got the ring off. Okay, now there's the gear. Everything looks good, not broke. Spacer and the gear and the bushing. Okay, the last bushing. Alrighty. Now let's get this down here so we can get a good measurement. Okay. So let's see what we got here. So I got the last one off, measured the bearing measurements for the number 3 crank journal is 1.1651, 2.1651 and 2.1651. So, and that was at the 3 and 9 position in both the forward part and the aft part, you know, in 2 different spots, and then at the 12 and 6 at 2 different spots, and it came out perfect, you know, as far as 2.165, and the crank should be at 2.164, which means there must be another number that's pretty high there, so it's in the range I'm going to get the book. So I'm going to get the book. I'm going to polish up these cranks, journals, and the rod journals on the crank. I'm going to get it all polished up, cleaned up, and then I'm going to remeasure it with the book in front of me so I know exactly where I'm at on the tolerance on these. If I'm even close, slightly out of tolerance, I'm going to go with it anyway, because this is a budget build. You know, this isn't a something that I'm going for a performance type engine. This is just an old stock engine, so we're doing a refresh on it basically. Now, as far as how long it's going to last, I don't know. If it's, of course, if it's something that isn't right, I will not sell it. Okay, I'll keep it for myself. If I get a VW car that needs an engine, I'll put this in there, and I'll run it myself. And if it blows up, then it's no biggie, you know. I'll just put another motor in it. But whatever. So I got the tool, I got it off. These are the last parts to get off. Now see these oil, see that oil stain there? When I polish these, that'll probably come off this. But the ones that are in the actual motor case, that's what I'm going to use the steel wool on. The 000 steel wool and WD-40, and just kind of get the oil stain off. And so it's smooth too. Okay, so I think that's it. So the next step is I'm going to get the case really cleaned up, get everything, get this polished up. I think I'll do a video on just the polishing of it, and get the case cleaned up, but I'm not going to go through all that again. I got an idea how to get it clean, and then we'll get it apart, have it all ready to go, and then I'll order parts for it. So until next time, we'll see ya.